available. And so what I'm going to do is cover basically the playing field, or ask the question, what systematic reviews are currently available in terms of addressing the question of what works for preventing childhood obesity as well as increasing physical activity. And certainly navigating the evidence can be a difficult task. And we often wonder, where should we start? Where do we get going? Here's the outline. And I'm going to break it down into looking at the evidence for obesity and then the evidence for physical activity. And I'm going to focus specifically on children. So how did I go and look for these systematic reviews? I have gone and searched healthevidence.ca. I've also searched the Cochrane Library, as well as the reviews. We're looking at recent reviews. And my experience has been that when I've done a review on community-wide interventions, people keep coming back to a 2001 review which says something works. Well, we're finding out, well, guess what, it doesn't work 10 years later. So we're going to focus in on the evidence from the last 5 years. And if you want to talk to me at a break of what we found when we compared those two reviews and why I think it's so critical we have up-to-date reviews, please get me started on that. So we're going to so we searched these databases for anything around obesity and around physical activity, and we also narrowed it down to children. And I have broken it down into the early years. When I found all these reviews and narrowed them down to those in topic, I then did a mapping exercise and tried to read through the reviews and the abstracts and the summaries, the ones including on healthevidence.ca, and tried to pull out the themes and what are these reviews saying, and then put some sort of summary remarks in the slides that I'm going to take you through. So today we're interested, I think many people are interested here in the early, working with the early years. Already some of the conversations this morning with people have indicated to me that they are really interested in what goes on in the first 5 years of life. So I'm going to focus in on that first, and then I will come and talk about children broadly. And so why would we be interested in the first 5 years? Well, there is good epidemiological research that shows that obesity in the early years is associated with negative outcomes, including chronic disease later in life, negative health outcomes, and a rapid weight gain in the first 6 months is certainly a determinant for obesity later. And it's also a predictor of overweight later in life. So that's why I've pulled these separately. These conclusions are based on 7 reviews, and here's the 7 reviews. The literature, so these are 7 reviews which had specifically spoke to the issue of children under the age of 5 years. So those reviews which are broader, I'm going to talk about those later. Okay, so the bottom line is the literature is sparse, and it is varying, but there is evidence as a whole. The evidence base as a whole, it's weak. So the reviews show that leaning towards educating parents, caregivers about health, diet, and exercise. So 2 reviews gave us these conclusions. Base it upon a framework, one of the 7 reviews. Multi-components, just target a variety of obesogenic behavior. 2 reviews spoke, and 1 review focused in on making sure that the trainers, that we train the facilitators, which makes sense. People need to know what they're doing, do it optimally. And there's 2 reviews which gave a theme of being culturally sensitive. Also, we find that within the early years, it's important to use components of structured, sustained, moderate to vigorous PA, and also give nutritional advice. So there were 2 reviews. And 1 review suggested addressing cognitive and environmental barriers to exercise and dietary change. And 2 reviews really said what we need to be doing is evaluate properly and use strong research designs. So what works? Again, we find parental involvement is key. And where can parental involvement occur. Certainly exclusive breastfeeding in the first 6 months. Actively engaged to reinforce the messages to children, 2 reviews. A parental component in the home. So again, also we have 2 reviews on educating parents and children. Some reviews around lifestyle modeling and consider financial rewards in the low socioeconomic status groups, and also limiting sweetened beverages and limiting TV viewing to children. So it seems that the reviews in the early years are giving us some indication of where we need to be going. Okay, so I need to move very quickly. And so in the early years, there's 2 places that don't work. Okay, now for obesity in children, there's a key review, and that's by Liz Waters. They've identified that there can be strategies from addressing BMI in the children which are 6 to 12 years of age. Only were they able to provide interventions of effectiveness, healthy eating delivered in the education system. Outside the education system, as you would expect, certainly in the children under 5 years of age, and no effect certainly on BMI in those early years as well as in the teenagers. And they also concluded around physical activity combined with dietary interventions. Now there's also another 14 reviews, which I won't go directly into detail because I'm going to give you the evidence map in just a minute. So these are 3 reviews. And one is looking at girls specifically. And here's another 4 reviews we can move through showing some evidence. Again, we're getting a sense of school-based approaches keep being reiterated, and some evidence around support. There's no evidence around supporting the disadvantaged age. They haven't specified the age groups they've worked with. Very limited evidence around mobile phones and implementing sporting policies through sport organizations, inadequate evidence. And there's 4 more reviews, and again, emphasizing the evidence around schools and some work around promoting PA. A final 2 with behavioral interventions to prevent childhood obesity. And again, the school setting is reiterated. So our map now looks like this. We have school-based interventions, and that is certainly around the 6 to 12 years of age, and I've marked the reviews which are supporting that. We have home support to disadvantaged is coming out as not evidenced. So we've got an X against that, and mobile messaging and policy through sport are really limited and inadequate. This next slide has showing that there is some evidence around targeting screen time and no evidence around weight management in the under 5 years, behavioral interventions to prevent childhood obesity. Again, small changes, but really behaviors, we can't find evidence around behaviors that change BMI. Coupling repeated food exposure with tangible non-food or social reward, there seems to be a little bit of evidence in that regard. Okay, now I promised you physical activity, and what we did is we looked at the Cochrane reviews, and what we have here is community-wide interventions. There was one study which looked at children, and that was in the school setting, but overall there's a real lack of evidence. And the mobile phone messaging for physical activity is not working. School-based interventions do work, and that's Maureen's intervention. And family support is not coming out looking very good, as well as standalone mass media. The Brown review is not good at all. Many of you would be familiar with the 7 best investments for physical activity. I've stretched it now and said for children. So where does the evidence lie? So the experts are saying, giving all these things smiley faces, but we've got some sad faces and some really indeterminate faces here. So certainly the evidence pits itself against some of the experts. So in conclusion here, I'm just wondering whether this is your feeling when you look at the evidence, when you look at systematic reviews, whether you find yourself in a new place and wonder how to get back to Kansas or get to a new location. And I'm really hoping that there will be some of the new Cochrane reviews which are emerging, which will help us in this regard, certainly around the built environments and incentives for increasing physical activity. And the key thing is we really need to look at once we use this mapping up process, we need to look at the reviews carefully, and we need to go down inside the individual studies and see what we can find useful. But I'm wondering whether, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, she went looking all over and doing some pretty dangerous things like trying to kill witches, when all she had to do was click her heels together and she would be where she wanted. So I think, like Dorothy, maybe one of the biggest challenges for those us working in public health policy and in public health units is to just do a few clicks. Click our way to Health Evidence Canada, into the Cochrane Library, and even when people are presenting, and I've done this, is open up my iPad and click to the evidence and then get up and ask the question and say, you've just said this works. I'm now quoting a systematic review based on 20 studies, and they are saying that it's inconclusive. Can you please explain further? So, and I've had some really discussions in Malaysia with policymakers who have just, and I've said, I've just trained 40 people in your country to use iPhones and find the evidence real fast. You better, because he was saying, oh, there's no evidence around what works. We can do anything we want. And I said, no, hold on here. We've been training people. And everybody came to that workshop with a device that was accessing Health Evidence Canada and the Cochrane Library and policy evidence databases. So you better be careful. Okay, so that's where I'll end up this tour today. Thanks very much for paying.